The Godfather's Daughter, a tremendous read. I'm in the middle of reading it right now. It is written by Rita Gigante. Rita Gigante is the daughter of notorious crime figure Vincent the Chin Gigante. Vincent Gigante at one point was the country's most powerful mafia figure. Today, Rita is a author, psychic, medium, healer. What you're about to see is my interview with Rita. It is one of the most intriguing interviews because she's so honest and down to earth. The link to buy this book will be in the description area. You can get it on Amazon, but I put it in the description area because it's just a click away. Believe me, I would not steer you in the wrong direction. This is a great, great read. Please like, subscribe, and share. This next interview you're about to witness is one of the most intriguing, one of the most honest, and one of the best interviews I've conducted thus far. So without further ado, my interview with Rita Gigante. All right, this is a guest I've been dying to have on. I have Rita Gigante. And if those of you who don't know who Rita Gigante is, she is the daughter of, at one point, the head of one of the most powerful organized crime organizations in the country, possibly in the world. Is that accurate to say?
It's pretty accurate. He was he was the head of the commission, which meant nobody could really do anything without him sanctioning something. You know, that's how it was. How I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I'll tell you, he was a very charismatic man. My dad. You know, I always said he could have run anything because of the way his mind thought. He wasn't schooled, like, school wise.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like him. I don't even know if he graduated high school. I don't think he did. But he was extremely smart, of course, street smart, but just smart in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So he could have put his mind to anything and have done it.
Right.
But,
right.
in where he grew up, it was, it was the dominant area of that lifestyle, right? So there were only so many things you could be when you grew up. Let's say if you already knew you weren't going to school to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, then you look to other things to do. He loved boxing.
I was about to say, and
loved it.
Yeah, and we didn't mention his name. So your dad was Vincent Gigante. They called him.
Right.
His nickname was the Chin.
Right.
But yeah, the two things that come out of the ghetto is either you're a fighter or you're a criminal, and he was both.
Right. Exactly.
So where was it that he grew up?
He grew up in the village, West Village, and he basically lived there all his life. I mean, he would go from maybe one apartment to the next, and he ended up landing on LaGuardia at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But Sullivan Street was a big part of, his life and where he grew up and where he ran his business and all of that. So, yeah, he was well liked. And so when he was fighting, first of all, he couldn't even fight at the age he fought. Someone had to help him with that. And in other words, the guys in the street loved him. So they got him into box, even though he wasn't of age. And Vito Genovese just absolutely loved him.
Right.
And he really endeared himself to Vito.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother and grandfather were not, well off. They were, my grandmother was a seamstress. My grandfather was a jeweler.
Mm-hmm.
And the ironic thing is my grandmother had, in Italy, when they lived in Italy, she had servants, she had, she lived very well. They had money in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very much about education. So this was all very different for her. This is not something that she was a survivor. I mean, that's the bottom line. She did what she had to do. But she ended up not following her own dream, and this is what ended up happening. So
the more research I did on your dad,
yeah.
the more I kept thinking he is the closest real life thing to Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal mind of all time.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Wow.
Because
I don't know much about Lex Luthor. So
Lex Luthor was Superman's nemesis, and he was the self-proclaimed greatest criminal mind of all time.
Right.
And he was supposed to be very savvy. And the more research I'm doing on your dad, videos, reading, I'm like, he's Lex Luthor. He's the real life Lex Luthor. Fooled everybody.
I remember him in the Superman movie, but I didn't know much about him. What's his name, played him, and I just thought he was funny.
Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And he played it. He played it well, but
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, he totally was. His mind, to be able to sustain what he did for the amount of time that he did. I mean, that would blow anybody away, because I think it had been 40 years since he spoke on a phone. Never spoke on a phone till he went back to jail, the last time, and then passed. I mean, he didn't do things that others did.
Yeah.
He didn't, it's funny. Well, we can get into that later, because he comes to me all the time and we have great conversations, because
I definitely want to talk about that.
Yeah. I know we want to get into a few other things, but I'll remind me about that, because he honestly didn't. Now that he's in spirit, he didn't never like the bathrobe. He just didn't.
So let's fill the people in who don't know. He was basically famous for. Now you tell it. Was it?
Yeah. He was famous.
Was it sincere, or he was really just making? It was just basically.
No. He was the greatest actor of all time.
Okay.
He definitely could have won an Academy Award for this one.
Yeah. So go ahead. You can say.
And yeah, he knew exactly what to do. And it's funny, when I think about it, how John Gotti was he was flashy, right?
Yeah.
And my father was the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, because my father thought, well, he draws so much attention with all those flashy $3,000 suits and blah, blah, blah. But yet my father being in a bathrobe would kind of make you, also draw in some attention, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was the attention of, I'm a sick man, I'm mentally ill, and and to a degree, he had to have, as smart as he was, you begin to believe your own lies when you are lying as consistently and as much as he was. So I think some of the boxing affected his brain, but not as far as business went.
Right.
He did have a heart condition. He always did. So, but in the end, even if, say, they would have let him out after those 12 years, he would have been okay.
Right. Right.
But,
so basically, he was famous for portraying an insane man.
Yeah, he said he had paranoid schizophrenia. He would check himself in and out of mental hospitals when he felt, the federal government was too close. And he would walk around in a bathrobe. Sometimes I'd be, he would tell me, "Come on, we're going for a walk." And then he would get into what you would call his
character.
Yeah. So, he kind of mess up his hair, put the hood up of the robe, and, he'd be in pajamas and slippers pretty much.
Yeah. And he would mumble to himself, right?
Mumble to himself, or the tree, or the whatever it was in front of us. He'd stop, he'd point, and he'd say to me, "Make like you're holding me up." My father was almost 6 feet tall. I'm 5'1" on a good day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was really no holding him up. But, and we had to also, be like, the doctor would come and visit him at my grandmother's, right? And he'd sit with the doctor, and the doctor would be asking him questions, and my dad would be going off on all kinds of shit, whether he'd come out with something that the cartoon cartoons were always on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So, he'd either come out with something that the cartoon said, or he'd say, God told me to say this, or, and in some instances, it was very funny, to be honest.
Yeah.
So you really have to like try not to laugh. And yet the doctors, this is, who knows?
I would assume a man of his power would have the doctors in on it.
I would imagine people were getting paid.
Yeah. Right.
I would imagine.
I also heard, and I don't know how true this is, that he also from time to time would urinate in public to even greater go further than that.
Do you know? I know that's been said, but I never witnessed it, and nobody in my family has ever confirmed that.
Okay, it's probably just urban legend.
Yeah,
that happens a lot. The media kind of exaggerates a lot.
Yeah, I mean they ripped us to shreds. More times than
I could only, we'll get to that, but we'll definitely get to that. That's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. But this acting of paranoid schizophrenia, this was nothing new though, right? I mean, there have been stories where FBI came to arrest him, and he was in the shower with an umbrella and no water running, and like crazy thing, and for a while it actually did work, right?
Oh, it worked forever. They couldn't get anything on him. It worked right up until the end, until somebody ratted him out.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. Here's what I want to say.
Good.
Even if they knew they had nothing on him, RICO and the RICO Act and people coming forward saying stuff without even producing really real evidence,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how he got caught.
Right.
And it was the inevitable, because they didn't want my father would always say this: they couldn't get a piece of what I had, so they didn't want me in that business.
Okay. All
you know what I mean? Like if they if the government couldn't get what I had, but if there was a sharing maybe of something, maybe they wouldn't have come after him.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure.
He would always say that. He always say they were the biggest organized crime of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Not even his, life. It was the government. And I'm.
Oh yeah, they say yes. People say it all the time. Yeah, and it's the God's honest. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's the God's honest truth. Because not only do they could they make the rules, and they make the rules for their benefit, and it's 100%. I mean, it's a whole other discussion, but it's the God's honest truth. The other question I wanted to actually ask you was, I just lost my train of thought a little bit.
That's all right. Take your time.
Oh, right. The other rumor is, and I don't know if you know, and you can just tell me whatever you know, is that before him, everybody knew that Tony Salerno, they called him Fat Tony, was head of the Genovese. But from what I've read, that wasn't true, that your dad was that whole time, and he was just basically the front.
Yes.
And that was accurate?
There was several fronts.
Really?
Yeah, there was a few that, yep. So, and that's typical of that, lifestyle. They always keep themselves in the background, and they put somebody in front to make people. And, that's the loyalty piece. That's considered, you want to be loyal to me, then this is what you have to do. Right. And you can't cry if,
Right. Well, the old timers, I could definitely see that, because my next question was going to be, why do you think somebody like that would put themselves on the line, put themselves out there to protect somebody else? But you just answered the question, that old time moral value of the street and organized crime was there. It was the later generations where it kind of fell apart.
Yeah. And he was very good to his guys. Uh-huh. So he was a very fair man. He says to me, he says, the way they run things now, allowing the stuff to happen that's happening now around the world, he said, at least we had a code of ethics.
Yeah.
That's how he describes it. At least we had a code of ethics, that it's not that you just go run around killing people.
No.
Listen, I'm not making what he did right. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm just giving you,
I understand.
A little bit of perspective of maybe what he was thinking in his own mind. Like, we just didn't do things to do it. And he was very big on following that, code. There was no, like, when John Gotti decided he was going to take it into his own hands, uh,
Paul Castellano.
yeah. And my father liked Paul Castellano.
Yeah.
Because he was an old timer.
That was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you, is how did he get along with the other bosses? Because
he liked Paul.
Okay.
Yeah. And there wouldn't have been an issue had there wasn't the ego of John,
Right.
and he just couldn't. My dad was, listen, for my dad, it was about power. Never mind the money. The money just came and went. He knew that. He knew how to, never worried about that. But it was about the power, but it was also about respect, and he did that as he rose up, and so he just expected that there should be respect between the families. There's no reason to have to, no reason to have to necessarily get into, fights or this or that. Like, listen, we respect our own territories. We work, but he became who he became because he was a fair man and people knew it. And he pretty much was the last of the Mohegans as far as following, as far as following the code.
Yeah, he was the last generation. Yeah, absolutely. Because your father's generation, they would rather die in prison than actually, say something. And the later generations, immediately it's let's make a deal.
Yeah.
Do you know of any other dealings? I mean, you said he liked Paul Castellano, but do you know of any other bosses that he got along with? Like, but during that time, I think it was Persico was for the Colombos, and then there was I think Massano was the Banano guy.
As far as I knew, there was no dissension with anyone but John.
Okay,
that's as far as I know. Yeah,
because when I grew up in Bensonhurst,
right,
and it was everything was the Persicos. I mean, the whole neighborhood was the person, And as a matter of fact, I went to high school with. I think I told you this. I went to high school with
the daughter.
Yeah, what the hell is her name? Jesus Christ, she's gonna kill me when she sees this. I've known her since I'm 16 years old. Desiree Prescott. Yeah. We went to high school together. Who was Ali Boy's daughter? But anyway, let's get into you a little bit.
Sure.
When did you start to realize? At what age did you start to realize that you had a different father from everybody else? That things weren't like a regular American family.
This is how it was, John, because I came so far after everybody. It was like I came 15 years after the first child and 10 years after the one before me, right?
Okay.
So I was pretty much a change of life baby. And by the time, I came, so much was going on, so much that, my mother was, experiencing anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff because of everything that was going on. And I was born very, very sensitive. They call what I experienced an empath, someone who could feel everything, so being born that way, growing up in a house that there was anxiety and stuff all the time, I was totally feeling all of that, right? But more than even the average kid, let's put it that way. So as I grew up, I realized how sensitive I was, but nobody knew what to do with that. Back then, you don't go to a therapist, you don't go. By the time I knew Dad was who he was, I mean, at 10 years old, I could remember sitting at my grandmother's, dining room table, and he's sitting down at the head, and there's like maybe 4 guys around, and the radio is on loud, and the cartoons are on in the background. And I'm sitting and I'm listening to the cartoons, and I'm listening to what's going on here, and I'm noticing he's important, but I don't know how, And in this environment, we'll say, you just grew up knowing not to ask questions. people always ask me, how did you know? You just know. You don't know really how you know.
Right.
So it was that kind of secrecy. It was this watching him with these men where they would be whispering. They would go up to his ear and say something, or hand him a piece of paper and he would open it, and then he'd rip it up, and they'd either flush it down the toilet or burn it or something. He'd give his orders, and they all got up and left. And this went on, for as long as I can remember. So every time I asked, what does daddy do? It was either he was sick. At one point I think he worked in a hat company. I mean, there was shit like being thrown at me. Like I was like, what are you talking about? But again, once you got that answer, it was like, okay, don't go any further. You just kind of like knew not to go any further.
Right.
But it was always daddy was sick.
Mm.
Always. And then when I found out at the age of 16, then it was the paranoid schizophrenia. It was all of that. And I was like, okay. I was very much blown away by, and it's not that it was a shock in the sense like, oh, now I know why, blah, blah, blah. Like all the pieces of the puzzle snapped into place when I found out, right?
Okay.
But it was like, holy shit. Like what scared me at that point was I was afraid of him for a long time. But what scared me more was somebody could come and take him. Like the government could come and take him at any minute.
Mm-hmm.
I was never really worried about another family because instinctively I knew nobody would come after us. That's not how it worked in Italy. It doesn't work that way, but here it works that way.
I see.
So I wasn't afraid of that. I was more afraid of the government coming and taking him away. And my mother, was just consistently, depressed or had anxiety over it because you're always waiting for the shoe to drop, and that's not an easy way to live.
No, definitely not. I have so many questions, but how did your mom and your dad relieve some of that stress, or was there any relief?
I mean, they'd have their moments. My mom would go visit him in the city for the weekend. Sometimes I'd go because he only lived with us for a year out here in Jersey. And then the both of them got arrested because they said they were bribing the police department. They gave them a $50, gift.
Oh my God.
Like,
really?
How you put something in an envelope and
like the mailman
donation. Yeah. Donation. And my sister actually gave it to them. Like my oldest sister, said, this is just a donation to the whatever. And they got arrested. And then that's why my father went back to the city. So I only really grew up with him. I was a year and a half when he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would visit him back and forth into the city. So I'll tell you one thing, my mother's family, they were great and they were a lot of fun. And they saved a lot of, us being in that depression and anxiety all the time. They would come and visit all the time. They would stay at my mom's house. I mean, that was our saving grace.
Oh, okay, good. I think everybody has one part of the family like that. On my side, it's my father's family.
Right. So you understand.
So there is a lot of times, I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to insult anybody. There are daughters of guys in organized crime that really reap the benefits and take advantage of it, whether it's going to a nightclub and nightlife and having a good time and starting trouble and knowing that they can't do anything to her, or if it's just the Mercedes Benzes and the cars and the jewelry and the money and so on and so forth, and throwing their weight around a little bit. Did you ever do something like that?
Never.
I didn't think so. You don't seem like that type of
My family we were raised, my mother was a very simple woman, simple in the sense that not stupid, just simple, like lived a simple life. She was all about respect too. She grew up poor, and everybody kind of helped each other out. You know what I mean? And she grew up with holes in her shoes. It's like they didn't have anything, but it was always about respect. You don't open up your mouth. You don't say anything. You don't boast about anything. You don't, that's not who we are. And it's true. None of us ever felt comfortable with that. If we had to go pick something up, they already knew who we were. We didn't have to say a word.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because my grandmother went to a certain place for meat, for, ravioli, cheese, like everybody just knew my grandmother in the neighborhood. So if I said, I'm here to pick up something for my grandma Yolanda, well, that was it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But never went into a nightclub or a this or a that or the Rettons or no. There was no need for that.
I didn't think so. You don't seem like that type of person, but that does happen.
I'm sure it did. I mean,
as a matter of fact, there was this one time, and it was by accident too. I was out with a friend of mine, and we were in Bay Ridge because back then all the clubs were in Bay Ridge,
right?
And Desiree was there, and she was like, "Oh, John," and I got it for free because she was there. And it was by it was
right.
just fun. It wasn't like we would hang out a lot. We just knew each other. She's like, "Oh yeah, come with me."
And it's funny because there was only one incident in high school where this kid who was on steroids, he was really like fucked up on steroids and everything. And, he kind of like bulldozed into me. Mm-hmm. And I just said to him, I said, "Excuse me." And he just told me to go fuck myself. Right.
Oh God.
And I was like, okay. And I just turned around and I says, "All right, you're an asshole," to myself. I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, right.
But that afternoon, because the friend that was with him knew my family, mm-hmm. and he told him, well, that kid chased me down right out.
Yeah.
And oh my God, you have no idea. But John, I'm going to tell you, as he's saying to me, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I'm looking at him going, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
I mean, that's
you already forgot about it.
But that's just too, like, I would never, ever even admit to something.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you meant
see what I'm saying? It's like,
I see what you're saying.
I could have said, "Yeah, you asshole."
Right.
But I just said to him, "I really don't know what you're talking about, but I forgot about it." I says, "Whatever." I said, "Have a good day."
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I think that made him more nervous because I didn't say anything.
Right.
But we just weren't like that. And I got after my book came out, I got approached on many occasions to do, the whole thing that other people were doing.
Yeah, the reality.
And I just said to them, I will not make this something that it's not. It's not who I am, and I can't do it.
Right.
So,
and I have to respect you for that, because plenty of women would have wanted that 15 minutes of fame.
Right.
To be on TV and make that money and look glamorous. I mean, fame is addicting and attention is addicting, Right. And for somebody that absolutely said no, and you probably would have been one of the main characters, that's very respectful, very admirable.
Well, I don't begrudge or put down anyone who has done that. I think you have to follow your own path.
Right.
And I think if you can live with it, fantastic. Can't live with something that I'm not,
Yeah, exactly.
Just can't. No matter how much money. I listen, I know what money is, and I live a very simple life. Mm. Like, I don't live extravagant. It has served me to understand the value of money, which I did not growing up. I did not understand that value, and I had to learn it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're thinking, oh, it's always going to be there, but people ask me that all the time. So where's all the money? No idea.
Yeah.
No idea where it was left, who got it. Nobody's going to come and say, "Here, this was yours."
Yeah, right. So you moved to New Jersey. Where did you live before that? Were you in Greenwich Village?
Yeah, we lived on Sullivan Street. And then at 6 months, I came out here to Old Tappan, New Jersey.
How old were you when you came out here?
6 months.
Oh, you were okay. And you came
Yeah.
to Old Japan, New Jersey. All right. And your father lived when
He lived with us for about a year,
right.
and then they got arrested, like I said, and then he moved back to the city.
Okay, and he moved. Yeah, and that's where he spent the majority of his time. And there's very few pictures of your dad, on the street talking to guys. I think there was actually one pictures of where he was at one of the clubs talking and whatnot, and so on and so forth. I'm gonna assume that he didn't attend the social clubs or whatnot at all.
I don't know exactly where his meetings were. I can tell you that he stayed out all night and slept during the day. I can tell you, I'm sure there was a meeting place, but I don't know where. I know there were definitely. I don't know where they were. I don't remember his place being one of those places because I frequented it as a kid. So, but then again, I've been there at night, but not during the night, we'll say, right. So yeah, I think he only went when he absolutely had to, not just for because it was enough for him to send a message and be done. It wasn't like he had to sit there. It had to be important for him to show up somewhere.
Right. Right. How much in depth did you know about the actual business end of it, like the actual racketeering, numbers, bookmaking? How much did you actually know of all that? Well, legitimate businesses as well.
Yeah, I mean, I knew as much as the names, described themselves as. He never ever conducted business, and with his family, as far as especially the women in the family. This was never would happen. And so I learned later on.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, by the way.
Okay.
Because I watch shows with my wife.
Right.
And my wife goes, and I go, that would never happen. And,
right.
And she's like, what? I was like, the women being involved. And she's like, oh, yes, because, my wife thinks she's strong and independent, And I go, no, believe me, no, yeah. I'm from Brooklyn. That would never fucking happen.
Never happen. He would never allow that. And like I said, business was conducted during the night most of the time, all the time probably, because he was a night out. I lost my train. Yeah. So what did I know? I didn't know the ins and outs of anything. I just knew what the names meant. I knew what racketeering was. I knew the numbers. I knew this. I knew that. I knew he liked to gamble. But even simple things like a card game. They play pinochle all the time.
Oh, my fault.
And I'd watch him, and it would be nothing for him to throw down whatever and he'd win or he'd lose and he didn't care.
Right.
There was football. There was all kinds of things. There were also things that he did not condone, which was drugs. He didn't want drugs in the neighborhood or anywhere near him. So anybody who wanted to make a business about that, he didn't want any part of it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a sketchy conversation because there were so many people that the old timers say, no, we didn't want drugs, but then the money starts coming in for drugs, which is a lot of money, and they kind of turned a blind eye to it, yeah. and it got to the point where like guys like Gotti and I don't know who the other the other bosses and so on and so forth. They're like, oh, we don't condone it, we don't do that. I'm not saying I'm just saying in general, but it got to the point where it was just too much money to turn down, and it was easy money, Yeah.
Well, he got into other things. I mean, I'm telling you, as far as I know, that never, he just didn't condone it, right?
Well, I believe it. I do, because a man of that, because he was, if you see how he conducted himself, obviously, and how careful he was,
right,
and the things that he used to do, obviously, drugs would have been a big no-no because the ends don't justify the consequences just doesn't. You could make money elsewhere.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. He knew other ways to make money,
Right.
and whether it be in construction or sanitation or wherever it was that he knew, he could do it. So, and it wasn't just in New York City, it was other areas. So his hand stretched pretty far, and business could be anywhere in any state if he wanted it to be.
How far would you say? What was his influence across the country or global?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I'm not other countries, but across this country, wherever he wanted to place himself, he could, because he had that kind of influence. But I couldn't tell you, oh yeah, he was in Vegas.
Did he have people working for him in other states and whatnot?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think he was banned from Vegas or something. I forget what they had said. It's so funny that the mob museum over there wanted me to just give them his robe, and let them hang it, and for nothing. I was just like, what?
Yeah, but it's such hypocrites. You wouldn't let my father in your casino, and now you want his robe.
Right.
Yeah, go scratch your ass. It's unbelievable.
Exactly.
So you being his youngest, you were the baby. Did he show you any vulnerability?
He did.
Okay.
He did because he knew my anxieties, and he knew, I had my first anxiety attack at 5. I had my first panic attack at 7.
I think you and I have a lot more in common.
Really?
Than we think. Yeah, because I've been struggling with anxiety and depression since I'm about 10.
Yeah. At 10, OCD kicked in.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I never had that.
So, and that was just to survive. I just felt like I needed some type of, some type of control. So when obsessive compulsive kicked in, it gave me that sense, and it became my friend. What really helped me though was sports.
Really?
So, oh God, yeah. Because I was very athletic. Okay. So I could run with the best of them, even the boys.
That's fantastic. So, what sports did you play?
I played softball. I could play baseball. I could play football. I was tall for my age at a young age, and then I stopped growing.
Okay.
It's like fourth grade I stopped growing. So I can, dirt bikes. I mean, everything. I remember my mother saying to me, "We couldn't give you a doll. Put a ball in your hands, you could do whatever you know what I mean?
You're a tomboy.
Couldn't give you a doll." Yeah. So it was from day one, that vulnerability, when I was having those issues with that, he would rub my back, and help me to fall asleep. As I grew up, I was a jokester. So, I'd get him he loved Elvis. So I'd get him to get up and dance, in his boxer shorts. And he cracked up because he knew I was a little, crazy lady. Cause I was a jokester, and I would put on my grandmother's, coat and her shoes and whatever, and get him up. And he's got 2 left feet though. He can't dance for anything. He would make his guys go and dance with my mother whenever they went out. If they went to the Copacabana or something, he'd tell his friends, go dance with her, because he couldn't dance. But when he would get up and shuffle around, he would come out of character. Maybe the longest he came out of character was 10 minutes, if that. And then he'd go right back in.
Wow.
But those moments were precious to me.
Sure.
Because that's when I started to see, oh, it's not all this. There is that piece of him. He just can't do it, because if he does it, it's going to ruin whatever, maybe he was too afraid to come out of it too long, because then it would ruin what he had going.
Right.
Always having to stay in character. And that's no way to live. I
can only imagine the stress.
God. I said, my father never really got out of jail. He may have been walking the streets, but he never really got out. He was never really free. He went on one vacation in his life.
Wow.
And that was with my mother on their honeymoon to Florida, because everybody went there back then.
Right.
He spent 3 weeks. That was the end of it.
Yeah, that is kind of sad. Did he carry that whole that whole front throughout his sentence when he went to prison his last few years?
Until the end, when, the Twin Towers came down and he was petrified somebody was hurt in the family. And he called up and he was very lucid on the phone. And it was like they had him on tape. They had him talking lucid. And then several conversations after that, he was lucid. But really, what came down to it was the end when they told him when he was going to get out after 12 years, they gave him, he was going to get out. And they told him that he would have to either fess up and say who he was and what he did, or they were going to come up after his family for obstruction of justice.
Now, when you say family, you mean you and your mom?
Me, my sisters, my brothers, my mother, all of us. And that was it. Everything. He agreed to everything after that and said, yep. And had to finally speak the truth, speak that truth.
That's amazing. And I think you're right. The government is they to go after your family, and they would probably have done it if he would have kept on going. They probably.
I think so. I mean,
they probably would have done it.
Yeah, we all knew and we all participated. Not me as much as the rest because I was so much younger. But yeah, definitely. And my father would have never had that.
Did he give you any big expensive gifts when you were growing up or anything like that, or it was more like intimate stuff?
It's funny because people would come to him and give him things like jewelry and stuff, and then he'd sit us down and he'd say, "Okay, you can make these earrings and you can make this." And I was like my mother; I wasn't a jewelry person, so it meant nothing to me. I'd say to my sisters, "Take what you want." And I'd say to my mother, just hold them. I'm not going to wear them.
Right.
I said, I'm not really. So no, as a kid growing up though, if I wanted this awesome chopper, like a bicycle, so, I got whatever I wanted for Christmas. Right. And I really didn't need for anything or want for anything. It was just, you wanted clothes. Okay, let's go get clothes.
Right.
You want a Nintendo game because that's what was back then.
Sure, right? I remember. Yeah,
we played it. But my generation, or how old are you, John?
46.
Okay, so maybe even part of your generation, because I have nephews close to your age. We were outside. We played. We weren't like these kids today. On phones and this and that. So we enjoyed ourselves and that time. Those days are gone. I miss those days, but.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
There wasn't a need. Listen, when I graduated high school, I got an Oldsmobile. But I had my sister's Oldsmobile first. It wasn't like, oh, here's a Cadillac.
Right.
It was, here's a car that's used. So I used it to drive. Then when I graduated, okay, here's an Oldsmobile. And that was it. It was like then after that, I went out and I was working and I was this and I was that. I had to find my way. I really had to find my way because in this life, it was, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, and you're the last, so you'll just take care of your mother till the end.
Right.
And I had no intention of getting married and having kids because it just wasn't who I was. Okay. I'm married today, but I'm married to a woman.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So I had my own secrets growing up.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't even realize that.
At 10 years old, I knew.
Oh, wow.
I knew at 10. So now having to live that lie, which made me ill after a while, made me physically ill because I couldn't speak my truth. I couldn't come out and say because of him. At 19, I tried. At 19, I had the balls to try. And I got the most unexpected response you would imagine. It was dead silence I really thought I was just going to get a crack and a beating and all of that. It was dead silence. And he said to me, just going through a phase. This happens, blah, 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 the whole thing. Then he forbid me to see, any of my friends at that point, and which didn't happen, but this is what it was, And so I went back in at 19 and came back out at 24. And I said to my mother, I really don't care if you're telling me you don't, but this is who I am. And you're just gonna, try and have to accept that. My mother always knew and was more afraid of for my soul than she was for anything else, or for somebody hurting me because I was because I was gay, right?
I can't imagine. I can't imagine the stress and the anxiety. I can't, because not only the daughter that you are and being gay on top of that, I can't be. And how old were you at 19 years old? I mean, what year was it? 19 years old? The late 80s?
Yeah, early 80s.
I mean, that was
mid 80s. Yeah.
Just coming out back then was enough.
Oh my God. And he rose. He was already full blown.
Right.
He was supposed to be. So that was a no. That was like, and his own brother was gay.
Wow.
His oldest brother was gay. Everybody knew it. Nobody really talked about it. Sometimes they'd fuck around with him, like, make fun and all that. But he still loved his brother. But he didn't want that for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I knew I could not live my truth. So I was sick a lot with upper respiratory stuff because of it, growing up.
Right.
Till I finally said, I'm done.
I obviously all the signs were there when you were young. Like you said, you were more of like a boy. You like to play sports. You like to ride bicycles. You like to, so I'm sure like a man of his intuition.
No, absolutely everyone knew.
Yeah. And
everyone knew.
Yeah. And your mom too, I'm sure, they just didn't speak on it,
Of course. Nobody wanted to see it.
And it's today it's like nothing. Today I have two friends that are in the gym that are bodybuilders, and one guy competes competitively. He's a monster. He's huge.
Yeah.
And he's gay. And I had them both on, and I did, what's it like being gay as a bodybuilder. And, they're a lot younger. They're in their 30s, and they talked about when they came out. And, they were surprised how everybody accepted it and nobody cared.
Right.
Today, and that's now, but back then in the late 80s, that was rough. Rough.
Yeah, it was brutal.
And it's a good thing.
I didn't care.
Yeah. Right.
For me, I just wanted to not have to hold a secret. Yeah. Because I didn't like all the secrets that were in my house.
Right.
So it was like, I wanted to just be true to myself,
mm-hmm.
And I couldn't. And finally at 24, it was making me ill. I couldn't do it anymore. It was making me physically ill. And that was it. I said, okay, I'm done.
Well, I'm glad that you're in a better place. That's for sure.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. No, really, that I can only imagine. When people say about it now, and it's like, yeah, I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm like, there was this. I'll tell you this one quick story. There was this one woman that I'm a sewer worker in New York City, so we don't really have a lot of girls that work with us. And we had one girl that worked with us, and I mean, literally, she can kick the shit out of me. That's how manly she was. You know what I mean? But everybody loved her. You know what I mean? But she retired like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We kept in touch a little bit when we stopped, but she didn't get the job until it was the 80s, like around. She got the job when in the late 80s, and then she had retired after 30 years or whatever the case may be. And we had a retirement party for her, and she said, she basically was talking about how difficult it was back then.
Yeah.
She got into some physical altercations with guys. She because one guy after work, they went out and they got drunk. They were drinking and hanging out because she was like one of the guys, and one guy was teasing her, and she fucking just punched him square in the face.
Yeah.
And then he didn't retaliate because he didn't want to hit a girl. And then he didn't say anything because he didn't want anybody to know that.
Right. He got his ass
kicked. Yeah. So nothing ever happened to her, no consequence. Right. But anyway, that's funny. That's another story. So, let's talk about your gifts. You are a medium and a psychic.
Yes. And a healer.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So, that had, I would say, started in my mid-20s. and then just progressed over time as I became a massage therapist. I was a personal trainer. I worked for a chiropractor for a long time. I did all these things and then I got introduced to my mentor, who then took me under her wing, and then introduced to others. And then that world just opened up to me. And I started to be able to see things, hear things. I always could feel things, and I always knew things. I didn't know how I knew.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I started to get apparitions, which like I would be able to see like Jesus or Mary or somebody, right?
Wow,
Because
really?
I was connected to that energy, even though I don't really follow the Catholic religion at all. I just took what felt comfortable to me and I left the rest, you know? So when I connected on that level, it was, to me, I couldn't believe how many people I was able to help. And that to me was always something I knew I would do here, was to help people. You know, I didn't know to what capacity. I had no idea. I didn't even know I was a medium, which means you can talk to people on the other side, family members and things like that. I didn't know I could do that till my dad died. And he started coming to me. But I was always a psychic and always a healer.
Wow.
And so,
what were the first clues that you figured it out? I mean, like, what was like when you think back now and you go, oh, okay, yeah, now I understand why I could do this or why that happened or so on and so forth.
well, definitely the empath, which means I was, I could feel everything. That piece was so strong in me, and the knowing was so strong in me that I just didn't know what to do with it because I was young, right? But when I went to massage school and I would have my hands on somebody and I would close my eyes, I'd start to get images or feelings or knowings about things that were going on in people's bodies.
Really?
And so I'd say to them, you know, what's going on with your, I don't know, just as an example, what's going on with your kidney? Because, you know, I'm feeling like there's something not 100% here. It feels a little heavy to me. And maybe they had a kidney stone, you know, and they're telling me, well, I have a kidney stone and blah, blah, blah. So those things started to happen. Then I could pick up the emotional body, right? And the emotional body was, if I closed my eyes, I'd feel anxiety. Now I could feel anxiety because I grew up like that. So I could feel anybody's anxiety, right? But then I would get the knowing of this anxiety comes from a trauma in the childhood. And don't ask me how I knew it. I just knew it, right? And I would say to my client, okay, I'm picking up a lot of anxiety in this area. Let's say it would be the heart area. I said, and it really has to do with some type of childhood trauma. And usually the heart area has to do, the heart, I would say the heart, the breast, and the lungs have to do with grief. And so maybe they would say to me, oh yeah, my mom passed when I was very young. And it kind of just landed in that area, the grief. So I would go in to the energy and work with, I was just a conduit. They would heal themselves. I would connect to spirit. They would come through me, put my hands on somebody, the person, if they were willing to heal, ready to heal, they would heal, right? So it wasn't me doing it. It was spirit and them doing it, we'll say, right? That just got more and more. When I started to see the visions, I realized then, oh, wow, okay, I could really do this. So then I was being taught to visualize. So close my eyes and start to visualize things. And I could get really clear pictures. Once I started getting clear pictures, then spirit would start feeding me more and more when I would sit with somebody and talk with them. And now it's just so grateful that it's, you know, it is what it is. Then when my father died, I was like, holy shit, here's the man. Here is the man I saw dancing with his shorts on, rubbing my back. Like, this is the true Vincent, not the one that was personified in the street as a gangster.
Right.
Yes, because now I'm connecting to his soul and not his ego.
Okay.
And now he works with me to help others. And I can't tell you how many people from the street I've worked with, or that were in the street, or that were thinking of going in the street. and he would come through and steer them in another direction.
There's actually, I did not realize until you said that, is he didn't want his children in the life. Is that accurate?
Never, ever happened.
Because there is, I think, I don't know who wrote the book. I don't remember. It might have been The Bull. I'm not sure. Where he met with John Gotti, and Gotti said, "I just made my son," and he said, "My condolences."
Yeah,
and so that's true. That's accurate.
150%. That was, he never ever, and he said, "This dies with me. Nobody comes in here. Nobody comes to this life. This dies with me."
Yeah, he knew what it. Yeah, I mean, it sounded like your dad was not your typical. Far from. I'm a typical street thug. He was way more than that. You could tell. But
yeah.
Getting back to you, I don't want to get off track. That just had me totally forgot about that question. When was the first time he came to you after he passed?
Right after he died. He actually went to a friend of mine, and I got the phone call, and he said to me, "Next will be you. I'm coming to talk to you next." And then he did. He came, and I was with one of my clients, and all of a sudden it was like a bull in a china shop. I felt like I got run over, and I saw the visual of him, and I said in my head, because I didn't want to scare the person on the table, I said, "It's you." And he says, "I told you I'd come." And then it was, so he would come to me and tell me things, and then he would go to others when he couldn't get to me. Let's just say I was tired or not having a good day. He would go to others and tell them, "Tell my daughter this, tell my daughter this." And basically what he said to me was, I want to make amends. I want to make amends. I want to show you who your father really is. And I want to work with you to help others. And by doing that, he's releasing some of his own karmic debt, for whatever he did in this life. So every time he helps me, he erases a little bit more of his karmic debt. And of course, I said to him, "Let's do it."
Yeah, right.
Let's do it.
The first time he came to you, was it scary or was it comforting or a little bit of both?
It was scary because the feeling of it was overwhelming. And it was like that for a little bit until my body could adjust to that frequency, because everybody comes in differently when they come in. He just came in like a bull in a china shop. And I was like, holy shit. But that was his way of getting me to recognize him, And then I said to him at one point, I said to him, "You don't have to do that anymore. I know your energy now." And so it's like if I were to connect to, if you believed in Jesus, and like if I were to connect to Jesus, it's a certain energy. I'm acclimated to it now. Or Mary or Buddha, or they're different, but I'm acclimated to it. I had to acclimate to his energy because it's really the first time I was able to do that. And
no, how often does he? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it took me a bit to do that. I want to say took me a little bit to do that, but now he could come in daily. I mean, it really depends on the day, what's going on with family members. If he needs to get me a message for somebody or myself or whatever. He hasn't been here today, but he came over the weekend to give me a message for my sister. And he gave me a message actually through my friend who was sitting in the car with me, that he was going to protect us from an accident. And sure enough, there was a guy, we had one lane on each side. He had been doing about 85 miles an hour. And I saw him in my rear view mirror, and I pulled over because I knew if he hit us, we were finished.
Right.
It was going to be like a serious accident. So he comes when he needs to.
That's absolutely amazing. And that's got to be very comforting, because I'm sure there's plenty of people like myself. My father died in 2004. And for you, it's almost like he's never gone.
That's why I do this work now, John, because if I can give somebody that kind of peace, not me, but spirit, if through me can give somebody that kind of peace, there's no money in the world you can put on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it every day, and I'm so grateful, because people suffer years and years. I had a woman, poor thing, you know, lost her mother and just pretended her mother went to California and just couldn't deal with, you know, her passing. And so, and it was for me when my mother died, forget it, because we were like joined at the fucking hip. Took me a year and a half. I couldn't even work.
Wow.
So it took me a year and a half. So the joy it brings me now to be able to help someone through that, it just, there's no money you can put on that.
Yeah, it's irreplaceable. Yeah.
Irreplaceable.
Yeah. What do you think? You said you were a healer. What do you think was like the most dramatic thing that you remember just helping somebody like in that form or fashion?
There were several, I want to say, one in particular, we helped a woman cross over, who was very ill. And we actually saw her light body, because this is our physical body, but we have a light body because we have a spirit and a soul. And we actually saw the light body release itself from the body.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was an incredible experience. It's like when people say you come into this world alone and you leave alone, that is absolutely not true. You always come in with your angels and the people who are helping you, even family members, and you always go out that way. Mm-hmm. So to watch that and then to be able to help the people that were their family members, to me, that was incredible. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And to watch somebody heal from something that they thought would take their life. I mean, that they know then how incredibly strong they are, because they're doing it. They're doing the work.
Okay.
You know?
Did your dad ever have to give you a message for a lifelong friend of his, like somebody that maybe was in the life with him and you had to deliver that to that person? I'm not talking about like actual crime. I'm talking about just, whatever the spiritual message would be.
Not yet, but it's funny you asked that, because I'm going to probably see someone that my father knew very shortly. And I actually thought my dad was going to show up and give him a message. So I have a feeling that that's coming. Mm-hmm. But no, because I've never seen anybody after that. I haven't seen them. And there is one person that did reach out to me, that he was close to a younger guy, and he was basically his massage therapist. And so, but a completely respectful man, owns his own business, the whole thing. When he reached out to me, I was very touched, because he was just a good person, and he really loved my father. And for him to reach out was like a blessing for me.
You mean reached out? He's still alive, or
still alive?
Oh, okay.
Still
okay,
alive.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, all right.
So
no, go ahead. Sorry.
No. So that was, but I'm glad you asked that question, because now I really feel like that's going to end up coming. It's only been to people who have either been in the life or their family members have been in the life. Mm-hmm. And then he brings in their family members to talk to them.
Wow.
So he's with them all, they're just at a different level now than they were when they were here. So
what about your mom? Did she ever reach out to you?
Oh my God. Her and I are like two peas in a pod. She was the one that would call me 9 times a day. So yeah, of course she'll, she's loving her, I want to say her freedom, because she was at the end of her life, she wasn't as free. So she's with him now. So, and it's different, right. They're together in a different sense.
How did they meet, your mom and dad?
Well, my grandmothers were friends, so they were babies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my grandmothers would take them on the roof and they would play together, and they knew each other their whole lives.
So that's a real, personally, that's how I think how it should be. If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, it makes sense. And back then,
Yeah.
that's how it was.
Like this whole thing today of I gotta, find myself. I gotta see what's out there. I want to, I don't really want to settle down until I'm 30, 35. And it's like, I don't know if that's what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think there are supposed to's. I think everybody comes here differently and is looking for something different, and
right.
needs to experience what they need to experience.
Right.
I think that, but I think back then it was, you got married, that meant something. You don't just walk away, because today people, for every little thing,
it's like nothing. It's like marriage means nothing.
Right.
And could you imagine the tremendous bond that a couple have when they've known each other since they're 10, 12, 16 years old, and then they go through each stage of life together? Could you imagine the tremendous bond? Like, to me, the love grows over time. The passion is completely different.
Of course.
But the love of having that companion throughout your life, going through everything, is really what, to me, what life is about,
100%. I think that anytime I see a couple that's 80 something years old, still holding hands, walking down the street, I'm like, they lived a good life.
Yeah.
And you don't see it that much.
No, you don't. It's unreal. Like the vows mean nothing.
Right.
I know, we grew apart. I didn't know that was one of the vows. Till death do us part, or we grow apart. I didn't know that.
Yeah, people making shit up now.
It's unbelievable. It really is. It's just unreal. One last question. What made you write the book? Which I didn't get yet. It must be on back order.
Yeah, you might be able to find. I could actually send you a copy.
Oh, well, I actually ordered it on Amazon, and it's still
not there.
Not there yet. No, must be on. I don't know if it's on back order or not. So they keep saying, you know how Amazon is always like, oh, it's due date, and then I would check, and then it's like, oh, okay, it's not coming till now. It's not coming till now. But okay,
right, okay. So for me, the book was supposed to be very cathartic. It was supposed to be my healing, and it was supposed to be to help others heal, and it did. It's exactly what it did. So, although it's called The Godfather's Daughter, it's really about the subheading, which is an unlikely story of love, healing, and redemption, right? Which everybody deserves, as far as I'm concerned. So I got told by Spirit, you're going to write your story, and you're going to do it to help others heal, to help yourself heal.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay. It was 12 years in the making, because I got that message early on. Took me 2 years to write it, but they came a minimum of 12 years before that to tell me.
Wow.
But I knew I wouldn't write it till he died. And I knew I wouldn't write it until my mother had time to process his death.
Okay. All right.
Be out of respect for them. And it has nothing to do. All right, let me put it this way. The backstory is there. Everybody knows who he is in there. But the story is about how I moved through it and how I became who I am today, how I rose above all the craziness, and no pun intended, and, became the healer that I am, the person that really wanted to help as many people as I could.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really what it's about. And my family was against it. My sisters and my mother were okay with it. My brothers were not. And I respected that. And they didn't realize, I'm sure if they would read it, they would understand. But whoever did read it understood that it wasn't to hurt anybody. It was never nothing in there. Like, whatever is in there of him or that life, people knew of. They were either in a newspaper or they were on whatever it was.
Right. You're not revealing anything. Right?
Not revealing. This wasn't a tell-all. This was how can I heal myself and help others heal?
Okay. Well, I'm sure I'll get it when I read it, or when I get the book.
Please, I would love to.
Definitely
I
get it.
would love to see what you think.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link to Amazon where people could order the book in the description area.
Yeah.
So it's just a click away. And how else could people get to you for your services?
Okay. So they can go to Rita Gigante Psychic at Gmail.
Okay, your email. Okay.
They can go to my email. I have a website,
Okay.
ritagigante.com. And if they want to make an appointment quickly, then they can use my cell, but they would need to text me because when I'm working, I don't answer a phone.
Okay.
So it's 201-805-3909.
Okay. So, and that's for any of the three, right? Psychic, medium, healing.
Yeah. And if anybody wants a copy of a signed book, I can do that for them.
Oh, okay, good, good. So all those are I'm going to make sure they're in the description. So it's just a click away, so people could, order the book.
Perfect.
Get you, contact you for help and your services, and maybe get an autograph book. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, John. I don't know how to. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you. I can't. Look, I tell this to how can I say this? I don't reach out to people I don't want to talk to. I don't reach out to people I don't admire.
Right.
It's not like I'm working for CBS and I have to interview some shithead politician because they told me to. I only reach out to people that I think, if I'm interested in talking to them, people must be interested in talking to them.
Absolutely.
And I only interested in people that I admire. And, even though, you and I obviously come from the same background, but also very different.
Sure.
Right. But sure. Yeah, tremendous. And thank you so much. I can't tell you how much this means to me.
Absolutely. If
really,
you ever
really
want to do it again, I would love to.
You know what? Maybe after I read the book.
Yeah.
And then we come back. Yeah, that would be great. Or we could actually do an actual, maybe somehow get more into the spiritual psychic medium stuff. That would be even more interesting.
I've done things where people would call in and ask questions, or like about the life or my life or whatever. It can be done a million ways, and we could talk about that. We can talk about it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We'll definitely put it together. Thank you so much once again. I really appreciate everything.
My pleasure, honey. We'll talk soon.
Definitely. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye now.